Welcome, everybody. Lovely to see you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Live ACIM. And here we are yet again together. The commitment is beautiful to watch, actually, the devotion in the heart and the desire to know the truth, because we're all tired of living a lie. So this is really one of those shows where, in coming together as seeming separate people, we can let go of that illusion completely and transcend this specialness of peoplehood and come back to a full awareness of the mind exactly as it is. Perfect restoration of awareness is what we're going for, not perfected people. So while everybody's settling in, let's just take a little break and have a meditation for a few minutes. Okay, so everybody just settle in, and then I'll ring a little bell at the end just to allow us to come back together. Okay, very good. So we're just going to mute and have some silence. Hmm. Yeah, our topic for today is very deep. We've had questions written in over the last few days, and thematically they are identical. In the tweak needed in the mind, they are identical. And in the call for clarity, they are identical. And all of them contain a question of the possibility of self-deception and stuckness. And so it's very important that we keep with this show as first and foremost about us all sinking into the answer that's already been given, because that's really the relief of this show. And that answer is for the awakening mind. It's not for a person. It's not what should I do in form. It's not what is the answer to this personal problem. It's about, first of all, locating yourself and seeing that in your current experience, you are somehow without the comfort of the spirit, and first restoring yourself to that comfort of the spirit. Because until we're restored to that base, very basic answer, like a small child needs to be, we can't really sink in deeper for a relaxed, receptive way of hearing what might be guided for us, or what might be most helpful to unfold seemingly in form. And so the restoration of that safety in the mind is always our first port of call. And also seeing that even though questions may seem to have come in and they may seem to be not personally yours, they really are to indicate to you what's happening at a level of awareness in your mind, the mind, something that is out of your awareness, but gratefully in awareness and in irritation for one of your mighty companions, so that it's getting brought to awareness for the whole and what serves the whole. And so it's really important to remember that's our orientation. It's like a little play of awakening we have every week with the whole Brady Bunch present, or the Partridge Family, or, Modern Family, whatever version you like to see of all the little screens on your screen in front of you here. And the important thing is to know that you're all and none of them, all of the little seeming characters playing out their parts perfectly. And really, we want to come back into and be restored to the fullness of the love that's available to us and for us in every moment. And when we are confused or deceived in ourselves or lacking clarity at any time, it's because we've forgotten the truth of who we are. And we need to first be restored to that awareness. Otherwise, we're just cycling and trying to fix intensities that will continue to arise if we're trying to bang on the screen and hope something external will change to make us feel better about ourselves. And in the course, it says, are changes in the lives of the teachers of God necessary? And it says, to the advanced teacher, this question is unnecessary. And yet, of course, there's going to be a reflection of a shift, seemingly in form, when there has been a shift in the mind. Of course, there's going to be an outward reflection. Of course, you're not going to have the same reflection when you're thinking as a 5-year-old as when you're thinking as a 15-year-old or a 50-year-old. Of course, there's going to be a reflection of a different worldview and a different interaction, seemingly, with the world. But if you're looking to the screen to tell you who you are, or to tell you what your calling is, it's going to get very distracting and confusing, because all callings for the mind to come back to awareness of the truth of who it is are highly individualized and seem to be played out through characters, which all seem to have different personalities that need to be harnessed for awakening, so that you have a feeling of being on board with the spirit. So your cooperation is essential. It's not optional. Coercion doesn't lead to anything except resentment. And as we exposed last week, I don't want to. So today and this week, our focus is on means and end being together and why we don't want to. It's because we misunderstood the question. And we got clear at the end of the last episode that guidance was the answer, and guidance as it serves the whole is the answer. And until you want to put your life in service and discover what that actually means, you will be serving your self-concept. So it's not that you won't be in service, but you'll be serving to maintain your self-concept. The idea of yourself you came with, the family situations you were born into, the friends and areas you've grown up in, all of that is designed to keep you asleep. And so you must look at where you've placed yourself and what's guided for you, and get really clear about what's supporting and enhancing your self-concept, even, of a healing person in the world, improving themselves, and what's actually working to loosen and unwind you in the mind from the idea of being any of these characters at all. So again, it's highly individualized, and we're going to use some of the questions to peel us back off the screen so we can really see where we're getting caught up and stuck and mistaken in who we are, and why it keeps reoccurring, why a loop keeps playing out. So these are a few of the things we're going to look at. So what I'd like everyone to do is just take a moment just to close your eyes. And I'd like you to be aware that you're going to be very identified with the stories that I'm about to read out. They're very familiar. They're all of our stories. And the conclusions that get drawn based on the story and based on what's happening are very natural, let's put it that way, because they naturally unfold from an unquestioned belief in the mind and an unquestioned or unrelinquished desire. So when people see things saying, I see that coming back in again for me, it's only because the belief has still not yet been questioned. The desire has still not yet been questioned. The loop is still playing out. And remember, a loop is just an invitation once more to see something, such a grateful thing, see something that we've not been able to see yet, even though it's come up maybe 50 times in a row. Once more for healing, it's going to come around, show up, and offer us the choice in who we want to be. Do we want to be a character trying hard in the world who's doing our best and is sincere? Or do we want to discover that none of this is the truth of who we are? And literally have our minds blown and wide open and hearts open, and no matter what's unfolding, all of the love rushing towards us in our life in an inspired way. So that's two very different options. And because of the sincerity and the trying and the devotion to doing our best as people in the world, we keep missing again and again the off-ramp from the loop. Now, there's always an off-ramp available. So this is not like you made a mistake in the past, and now, unfortunately, it's going to take extra to fix it. No, the off-ramp is always available. Today, we will talk about nothing but the off-ramp, should you wish to take it. And should you find yourself that you've ended up back on that motorway and you're doing one more loop around, well, please, let's do it with a sense of humor where you can say, I can see I'm back on this on-ramp. Here I am again. But something from today's show has given me such a good sense of humor about it that I actually can be relaxed and at peace and watch it play out based on things that Sarah shared today, based on questions from my mighty companions, and based on the ridiculous nature of here I go once more through the same scenario that I've played out so many times, thinking I actually made a different choice. And yet here we are again. And so we really need a sense of humor to really take the off-ramp. You have to be laughing the whole way off. It can't be tragic. It can't be your fault. It can't be a personal problem that you have to fix on the next go around. It has to be seen as a drama that's playing out in a loop before you, for you, rather than something happening to you which it's your job to stop, and because that's the panic that we talk about, where you want to dampen it down again. And that just leads to more hiding. So we're really eager here today to come to the crux of what this is, to stop the spinning. That's when it's looping very fast. To stop the meandering through time and space that we think is at random. To stop the very weird vibe of, haven't I been here before? And I wouldn't call myself ecstatic. Our word that Laura gave us, that we're all now really appealing to have in our lives on a continual basis, not just hypothetically in some unknown future. And it's like, here we go, we're still looping. And all we need to do to change the scene is see who we are in the scene, and to see we're not in it at all. It's the attachment to the character and the story that the character keeps wanting to play out, the ideal scenario that the character thinks will have a winning situation for it. It doesn't really matter what it looks like. That's all we have to question. So we're going to be using this looping finger a lot today and saying, or just like, hold on a second, relax back and say, okay, what if I actually completely misunderstood everything? Like that my whole worldview is so off from so early, no matter how long I've been on a spiritual path, that until I can very humbly say, actually, I don't know. And, I don't think I do understand what's happening here. Until there's that tiny crack of openness, there isn't really much for the spirit to work with. The spirit's comfort will exist continually, but your accessibility to it will not really be there. And that's why I want to talk about authenticity and exposing. Authentically, we're not people. So, everything to do with people in a way is inauthentic. It's an inauthentic story about ourselves, but we can still begin there. And exposing. So I want you to think of all the people that you've ever seen, whether it's a painting or a movie or read in the Bible or heard a story of Jesus. Everyone who had to come to Jesus for help, and I mean real help, those that wanted their entire world experience shifted from one of pain and suffering to one of peace. All of them had to expose themselves in some way. They nearly were all stopped as they tried to approach Jesus. Even the apostles would try and intervene and stop them, because they were the lepers, they were the unclean, they were the unwashed, they were the ridiculed and the ridiculous of society, and they were not inherently welcome. And so they had to come out into some form of a clearing to make their way openly to Jesus. So that's the first part I want to talk about, the exposing of where you are. Because if you cannot locate yourself, you cannot follow guidance. Because guidance, even in our world, if you think of GPS, is getting from one seeming location in time and space to another seeming location in time and space. And if you don't know where you are, it doesn't matter how many times you pray for directions, you won't even understand the answer, because you have not allowed yourself to be seen, to be exposed. And I mean, just to yourself. Of course, the spirit always knows where you're at. Of course, your mighty companions can always feel where you're at. But the self-deception that doesn't let you very authentically, in a really raw way, discover where you are and what you're at and how you feel in this moment, it is disabling your access to following guidance. Because step 1 and 2 are usually hidden. Because step 1 and 2 be like, step 1, how to get out of the bush of thorns that you're currently lying under, in pain, with the sweat and the tears and the salt in your wounds. So it's very hard to say, well, you would just head north. You haven't gotten out of the bush yet. You can't just start heading north. That won't make any sense to you. And yet, even though you logically understand the guidance, as perhaps you join with a mighty companion to hear it, or you've heard it directly yourself, and you've heard it 5 times, but you still aren't on that path or going that direction, you'll humbly be able to understand why. Think of the Matrix. In the Matrix, or in Star Trek, when they want to beam someone out, they need to know exactly where their location is. And that person has to come into a clearing of sorts. They have to expose themselves. In the Matrix, they have to go to one of the assigned phone boxes, which is usually somewhere they can be seen by Agent Smith. So this is not really that you have to expose yourself to other people, but symbolically in joining with a mighty companion to hear the guidance and what's guided for you, and just to open your heart to really hearing the spirit without the filter that we all come with. You must expose where you are. So what do I mean by that? Now, I want all of you to take a moment to very, very rawly, authentically tune into how you're feeling in this moment. Just how you're feeling. I don't want you to start out optimistically. That really won't help. I want you to talk about, the lunch that's still repeating on you. I want you to feel into the fullness of your tummy or the emptiness of your tummy. I want you to feel the slight panic in your listening, the grabbing to get something or understand something and be clear. I want you to notice all of the little subtleties of your day and what's behind the door that you just closed so you could come in and join for this gathering. I want you to finely tune to how you really feel and locate exactly as you think of yourself and experience yourself to be a person in a world where you are at right now. And this is very powerful because in any joining with anyone, if we don't begin there, if I don't begin there, if I was doing a one-to-one with someone, then I'm not really going to have access to them and the juice that they can bring to this joining, their hopes, desires, wishes, fantasies. You see the judgment and the bringing things into egoic camp versus spiritual camp. And our idea that we can discern between the two is what kills the juice and has us ghosting over the top of being able to come to the spirit like small little children just going, ow, it really hurts. And if you're not saying, ow, it really hurts, then it will all just start to loop again. Because we don't even feel safe enough to say that or admit it to ourselves. We have some idea we should be better than that or different, or we shouldn't be experiencing pain. There's lots of shoulds and shouldn'ts. And yet, whether you come for joy or you come because something smarts and hurts, the fact that you came to the spirit for help is what counts, not what brought you there. I don't think anyone was coming out of supreme joy to Jesus. I can't think of one story where they came bounding across the fields to meet him, perfect, whole and complete, sharing in the joy with him. That is not the visual I have ever been given from anyone. So why would we expect it of ourselves? You see, that's the delay, that's the processing, the staying at home to perfect rather than just coming. I heard humbly fucked, completely at odds with ourselves and the world, and sore and wretched and, just looking to be relieved. That's really the only place you can come to actually hear an answer. So a lot of the things that people find difficult when I join with them, especially if they feel they're coming to a point where there's a shift happening in their lives, as I would say for everybody who's on this show, because having come through even the last number of weeks together, there's been a dawning realization of what works, what doesn't, and the tricks that we've put in place that have been keeping us looping. It's been so simple and so clear that we're not really able to push the awareness away anymore like we used to. And so we can feel the stuckness of our positions and the need for what feels like action in form. And so to get us on the right foot and to really be genuinely following, we must come back to the prayer of our heart so we can access the juice. You have to do this voluntarily. There can't be any idea of this will be good for me. I'll be happy later if I just, if I just stick it to myself now and force myself to do it. That is just not the way. It doesn't work like that. You'll be at odds with yourself, and you won't have relieved yourself of the intensity that you're currently feeling, no matter how pushed down it is. You'll grab for a fix instead of a face, because we're devoted here to facing the rawness and the intensity as we feel it, rather than just trying to fix it. Stop it. Okay, so that's the comfort of the spirit. So we've all now taken a moment to orientate ourselves. The moment you orientate yourself and you really can get a sensation of how you feel, even if that's boredom, it's like you've sent out the homing beacon of welcome to be found by yourself, because you've allowed yourself to not keep pasting over the top of it, that everything's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Just grand. Yeah, that's okay. We're talking about life, eternal life. We're talking about epicness. We're talking about absolute pure scintillating juice of the spirit. If it's just fine, that's a lot of pain, and that's a lot of dumbing down of pain. So, I've discovered that a lot of people are living in very pretty prisons. They're just like, they think they have points of choice. It's like, well, what color chandelier will I hang in my prison? It's like, and that's what passes for freedom. And I'm like, okay, but that's really painful. That's doubly painful. It's like being a scribe and a Pharisee. You're so far removed from Jesus. You're so far removed from just throwing yourself there. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to think of us a little more like the Roman soldier today. So don't worry if you weren't raised in Christianity, and I'm going to tell you the story. There's a centurion, which is a Roman soldier who's over 100 men, hence this CENT, the centurion. And he comes to Jesus, and he's been watching, and he says, my daughter is sick, but I know if you give the command that she could be well. He doesn't even ask Jesus to come and see his child. He says, I know if you give the command, she will be well, because I'm over 100 men. And if I say to one of them to do something, my command means it is done. And that is my faith. So here we have the centurion using the faith in a system he already understands, things he believes in, and a sense of responsibility and also trust of delegation, that you can't personally look like you're the only person running around doing every single separate thing for yourself. The understanding that the power could operate through and not just by your own hand. And I think that's much closer to something we can appreciate and understand. Perhaps we are just too far from the ones who were throwing themselves at Jesus's feet. But we can understand the centurion who has a certain standing in society, who has come to a certain understanding and self-discipline, and has been working in a devoted way to uphold a system. Once you are in an understanding of the devotion that upholds the system, it's very easy to swap the devotion to something that now will truly serve you, which is what the centurion did. And Jesus was so in admiration of his trust, not having come from even the Judaic system, which Jesus seemed to be teaching under, that he said, your trust is well-founded, centurion. Go home, your daughter is well. And that is the kind of faith that we're being called into here. The one that says, on behalf of the whole, I'm asking for what would truly serve. He wasn't asking for his daughter to be made well just to make him feel better or so he could be a better father. It was a genuine, loving request on behalf of one who could show up somewhere, on behalf of one who could not show up of themselves. And we do that all the time as mighty companions for one another. We are asking, if you happen to be someone who wrote the question today, on behalf of everyone for the answer. And in one receiving it, truly receiving the answer, We all are in receipt of that answer. So that's the second part of the answer for today. We're starting with the answer instead of the questions. And then when I read you the questions later, I think you'll really enjoy them, because we will not be, any one of us, 3 people wrote, we will not be fearful of the answer as if it pertains to us personally, because that is also one of the biggest blocks that are possible, or impossible rather. So we've located ourselves authentically. We're like, I've been trying hard at this for years. I'm sick of it. I feel like I'm going around in circles. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't like it. I don't feel good today. You know what I'd like? I'd really just I've even been vegetarian for 6 years. I'd really just like a burger. I'd really like a burger. That's all I can think of, nothing but char-broiled burgers right now. That's it, Holy Spirit. That's my authentic desire in this moment. And the Spirit goes, I see your authentic desire, and I raise you a singular purpose for it. Spirit's like, great, you feel terrible. You're sick of not eating meat. You want something different. You accept that in this moment, you believe you will feel happy if you have a burger in your hand. The Spirit's like, sounds great. Let's work with that. But if you say, I understand, it's better for me, it's good for me to not eat the meat because it wasn't doing well for me before, and you have all this justification and reasons and conclusions that you've drawn about a guidance that was given to you before, and you're not able to say you don't feel good in this moment, well, then it's going to be very hard to get you from A to B in your own awareness. You're really not taking any journey in time and space, but in a movement in the mind, which seems to be reflected outward in the movement of a character through time and space, there has to be something through which, a vehicle that the mind moves. And that is the story of a person in a world. Okay, everybody with me so far? I'm just looking to check in how everybody's doing. Okay, so it's very important that you, first of all, authentically locate yourself. And that means really rawly authentically. So there's just no point in sharing with someone who you either are going to give your usual sob story to, or who you have to show up as your best version of yourself for. So you need someone who you could just be authentic with, who knows the truth of you, knows your love, knows your devotion. Okay, that's number one. Ideally, it's the Spirit. But if you need a person, that's the kind of one. Always share up, okay? And share where guided, very important. Okay, so number two, the second part of that is, once you authentically locate yourself, then you can authentically just simply share what you think would make you feel better in this moment. And then you've harnessed a desire that doesn't have anything thwarting it. You've harnessed a singular desire. You really 100% believe you'd feel better if you had the burger. And there it is. That's all the Spirit needs, is one step that you're willing to take that can be harnessed for peace, for relaxation, for comfort in the mind, and for the intensity to drop away, where then the Spirit, having gained your trust once more, can show you how you don't have to be afraid of your desires or, your mixed motivations. You merely need to be exposing and aware of them so that the Spirit can pick between them to harness them to get you rolling. Okay, because we're all aware that truly following guidance is more a feeling of being in flow and a momentum and a movement and a kind of a preambulation that just feels good and relaxing and kind, because you're centered in something that's moving you rather than it being junky and each move at a moment. Okay, everybody feel clear so far? You might think this is very basic, but these are the basic mistakes that we're making. These are very, very important. And the longer you've been on a spiritual journey, the more likely you are that you're making the basic mistake, whereas a beginner would never make this mistake. They would never hide how they felt. They would never pretend over the top. They would never try to be somewhere they're not in a moment, thinking it was better or that they could climb higher as a result. And unfortunately, the longer we seem to be on a spiritual pathway, the more the self-concept hardens and the more removed we are from what we truly need and what will truly satisfy us. and bring us the blessing that's been promised now, not in 10 minutes, not even at the end of this call. So let's talk about why we get stuck, because I think it's very important. So we're going to do a little bit of a course reading, but mostly we're going to be focusing on the answer. So I'm just going to read you this little bit. There are not different kinds of life, for life is like the truth. It does not have degrees. It is the one condition in which all that God created share. Like all his thoughts, it has no opposite. There is no death, because what God created shares his life. And that's from workbook lesson 167. There is one life, and that I share with God. Okay, now the only reason you wouldn't want to follow guidance is because you don't believe it's your own will, that you don't believe it's what you would truly want and would make you happy, because you have an idea that there's different types of wills. There's your will, and maybe even what they will for you, and maybe them, and maybe God. I mean, there's all these multiple options instead of there being a singular will, because you are the ruler of the universe. So it's restoration of that awareness of that one will for happiness that will really convince you that it's safe to listen to the spirit. Because I can tell from what's been written that people have been praying and listening, and then just at the last minute, they forgot that the following was to bring up for them the very thing that had them stuck, to enable them to face it before they took the step fearlessly. So they would be about to follow or thinking about following, and the little, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it doesn't really matter, dude, don't do that one. I might just stay here. Yeah, I think just, yeah, when I feel it, like that feels good, just staying here, just doing exactly what I've been doing before. Yeah, that's probably the answer, because I can tell by how I feel. That's what the Course says. And they forget that the relief and the comfort of following guidance is the facing of something you would never see if you hadn't been asked to do something slightly different from that which enhances your self-concept, that makes you come face to face with something which just can maybe even creep you out without even knowing why. It just feels a bit weird. Following is facing that feeling first, and then you're on the roll. The step is taken already. It's not about what you will do in form, saying, oh, I can feel the resistance coming up to doing that thing in form. Actually, you're not afraid of the thing in form. You're afraid of facing what's the intensity that's coming up in awareness that you couldn't take the step without noticing. And that's it. It's just about noticing it. It's not about fixing it or changing it or wanting it to be better or forcing yourself through an experience. It's as simple as noticing it and then sitting with the spirit going, wow. Well, I mean, I thought it really made no difference which town I lived in, but I have an awful lot of preferences and a lot of fear coming up about very weird, random things when I thought of following through on the guidance that was given to me. And instead of coming back to our mighty companion to join again, saying, hey, well, listen to this, I've noticed all this, we draw a conclusion that says, yeah, that mustn't be it. And the scene is filled in with the belief that never got questioned, the desire that was for harm that never got exposed. And there we are back in the wash again, because we're avoiding. But now, even the thought of asking to hear guidance with someone else becomes slightly threatening, because we're like, they're going to say that thing again, and I've had to go. I know that's not for me, And so now there's a layer on top of it. It's like an archaeological dig to find the person. And you can have one-to-ones and conversations with people. And believe me, I've been doing this quite a long time. over year after year after year, and they bring up the same thing, and they literally don't even realize that you answered this for them last year or 3 years ago or 5 years ago. And not that you gave them your answer, you heard with them the answer that would bring up the joy, and they felt it in the moment. They felt the answer, but a little spook got them as they went to do it, and they never followed. Nor did they just follow through and say, that made me scared. The thought of it actually felt great when we chatted, but something weird came up after, which would be the point of opening to the guidance. It's really not about doing it or forcing it. It is just about the opening, the noticing, and the being aware. So this feels like a very participatory episode. So I'd really appreciate if everyone could turn their cameras on so that I can just see that everyone's with me, because this is a very intimate answer, and the feedback from your faces really helps. Just let me know that I've covered each base as we go along. So it's so lovely to see, it's just so lovely to see you all. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yes, we don't want to draw too much attention to people or faces, but it does help for understanding this is not up to you. You're not alone in this, and it's what serves the whole. It's not a personal problem or difficulty that anyone is having. It's literally a weather forecast for the mind to say, listen, all of us have noticed that this is where there's a stuckness this week. And collectively, in a decision to join together, to not see anything as a personal problem, we could step right past this. So thank you. Okay, so one of the ways in which it becomes very challenging to follow through on guidance is if we don't understand what it's for. Guidance, first and foremost, is to remind you that you're already loved, everything's already okay, and to help restore you to the awareness of the truth of who you are. Okay, and that's not a person. So it's not about it being okay for a person. It's also helpful to understand that the screen you're looking on and the seeming history of the character self that you believe yourself to be is a story designed like flypaper to keep you stuck being a fly in the world. It has no other purpose. It's never going to tell you, oh, guess what? You're free now. You are no longer that one. It's never going to tell you the truth of who you are, but it will reflect back to you thematically where you're looping in the mind, and will allow you to focus through the little dramas that play out, your attention, where you have power, thank God, where you have control, ultimate control, and that's in your deciding with the spirit, for God, for me, okay? We've all come this far together, so let's just go all the way today. And I just want to ask everyone who wrote in, do you really want the answer today? Because the answer is designed to set the mind free, and it can be highly insulting to the ego. It can be taken highly personally, which can only be the ego. And it can be some idea that a person could do something right or wrong in form, which of course is the same mistake again. We're just looking for release here. There really isn't anything else going on or on offer, just relief from the mistake. I remember years ago, I wanted to do a vox pop. I wanted to get a camera and a microphone and go out on the streets in Ireland where I was living. And I wanted to ask people one question. They weren't spiritual people. They definitely weren't course people. They were just ordinary people. I wanted to ask them this one question. If your entire life was a lie, would you want to know? So I'm looking at all your faces right now. If your entire life was a lie, would you want to know? You know, so it's humbling, right? For all of us. In this world, there appears to be a state that is life's opposite, and you call it death. It is the one idea which underlines all feelings that are not supremely happy. It is the alarm to which you give response of any kind that is not perfect joy. All sorrow, loss, anxiety, and suffering and pain, even a little sigh of weariness, a slight discomfort, or the merest frown, acknowledge death, and thus deny you live. Death is the thought that you are separate from your creator. It is the belief conditions change, emotions alternate because of causes you cannot control, you did not make, and you can never change. And that is our experience, if we're authentic about it, in a day. That's our experience. And the devotion then has to withdraw from things of the world to become a singular focus, to taking total responsibility for our state of mind. And it's not really what the form looks like. It can look like, you've simplified your life, you've honed down in, you're living in spiritual community, or you're in holy relationship, or you're living on your own and you're focusing on yourself. But if you're not keeping an eye on authentically how you're feeling every day and expecting, and I mean this, to be joyful, if you're expecting to process and be going through deep healing and crying and torture, if you're expecting that it will happen later, if you're expecting a person to awaken, well, you're going to be in hell no matter how much you've shifted the backdrop. Okay? The mind can think it sleeps, but that is all. It cannot change what is the waking state. It cannot make a body nor abide within a body. What is alien to the mind does not exist because it has no source. God creates only mind awake. He does not sleep. And his creations cannot share what he gives not, nor make conditions which he does not share with them. What seems to be the opposite of life is merely sleeping, when the mind elects to be what it is not and to assume an alien power which it does not have, thank God. A foreign state it cannot enter, or a false condition not within its source. It merely seems to go to sleep a while. It dreams of time, an interval in which what seems to happen never has occurred. The changes wrought are substanceless, and all events are nowhere. When the mind awakes, it but continues as it always was. Okay, so we are, yes, looking for a change of mind, but really a change of mind about your mind. It's really a deep change in attitude at how you're looking at this entire thing. So I'm going to start with one of the questions so that we can really practically get into the feel for this, so that everyone can be with us on the same page. All right, here we go. And I'll just read chunks of these. It's actually challenging to watch the amnesia that comes over the mind. Because a couple of months ago, this person had a one-to-one with me and we got clear on what the guidance was, and they have not followed it. So their questions here is because it's all sliding back in. And their one question is, but it is what seems to be coming in. ... So maybe it is my path. 3 question marks. If you are on your path, you will feel lit, alive, absolutely electric. If you do not feel that, you are not on your path. It's that simple. If you're not waking, bright, sparkling, to attention, excited by what's for you in your day, not a little reticent or whatever, then you're not on your path. you can be on your path again at any moment that you want, as long as you are willing to notice the minimizing of fear, the minimizing of following the guidance that's given, the slide back into what's familiar, instead of doing one little different thing that you think doesn't make a difference. But you know what? Your inability to follow that one little thing should show you that it makes a difference. And the fact that you slide back into what wasn't for you should show you the difference. There's not much I can say until someone's willing to acknowledge they're not following the guidance that's been given to them. Because we're already behind. This person had been guided to go live with a different family member, to not be in their old home, to not make any commitments till the end of the summer to any outward communities of any kind. They were given a holy relationship to be in, which they let go over the last few weeks, and then decided it was perhaps that person had fear coming up. Until you notice that you're not following what's been given and you think it doesn't make a difference, nothing will change in your experience. Everything that pre-exists, the unquestioned beliefs and desires that pre-exist, will slope back in. So it will seem to be just what's happening. But thankfully, this person has a wake-up mechanism inside that's going, but something doesn't feel really good about it. Something doesn't feel really good. So they connected yesterday with the person they're supposed to be on this show with every week, because that's the commitment both of them made. And that they're supposed to be the leader of the leader follower in the relationship. So they're supposed to be calling the person to be here if they're not here, and saying, where are you? Because there's not friendship, but mighty companionship. And that's the relationship their focus is supposed to be on. Of course, it's going down into one that looks like something that might help them overcome confidence or things, but it's a lie. Because they're being invited to transcend being a person, not self-improve a little bit in their little clique of where they feel their comfort zone is. And they're basically dying slowly. And there's nothing that can be shared unless there's an experience of frustration that raises above, the dampening down, and a desire to be alive, like alive. Because questions of will I, won't I slide back into this or that or again, when the guidance was given, and for a very short period of time, so it could be tested out and really lived. And then, if it wasn't taking, and there wasn't a feeling of a big shift from which would have occurred had the guidance been followed, and the broken away from the unhealthy relationships that were in place, which when we insist on doing healing with original family, where there's no possibility of the mind being healed by it, then we're choosing to stay small and keep recycling. And so I know this person has a really strong call and a really big heart. And that's why it's like, I only can ever share what's true. I can't join in the mesmerism with someone. And today I'm taking it as pure and utter devotion that the willingness to write in was there, because what I'm sharing applies to everybody listening. This is not something that happened to a person at all. This is something that's happening in the mind. And I really want to join in the courage. Again, the exposing is what allowed us to find ourselves today in the mind. And the ignition key can be turned, not to go back and try and do something that seemed to be guided in the past, but really an aliveness that can be found now that says, oh, wow, if I've been looping and fooling myself, I want to know about it. I want to break out of this. I literally didn't know. And that's the same for all of us. We don't know when we're doing that. And it's essential to have mighty companions who will say to you, this is the same. This is the same. I've heard this from you for 9 years. It's the same. There's no way out from there. There's no off-ramp from sticking in that scenario, because it's designed like Shell Beach. When you look at the movie Dark City, It's designed to keep looping. The whole point is it's a loop for you. Whereas for someone else, it could be highly guided, which brings me to the next question. And so I honestly, I'm in deep trust with everyone right now, okay? This is the same for all of us. And if I hadn't had mighty companions that could show me when I was doing it, I don't know what I would have done. And if I didn't keep them around me today, telling me every time I do it, I don't know what I would ever have done either, because there's not a person awakening. It's a play in the mind, and you cannot do this on your own. Your perceptual experience is so contorted. None of us can do this on our own, but we can be relieved immediately in the purity of our purpose and joining together. And I feel this strongly. The second question is almost the exact same, but the exact opposite, because this person has been making bold moves their whole life, really trying to get to the top of the mountain, spiritual striving, changing, willing to do anything, sell it all, move a country, go here, go there. But that's also their comfort zone. So that's the same for them. For them, the only thing that would be different, that would allow the mind to relax back from the enhanced self-concept, would be to do something what I call normcore, completely normcore. And that would be to settle into something that's so pristine, so steady, so non-spiritual as the world experiences it, that they would be left in that beautiful raw authenticity of just how they feel in every moment. They would be left with no comparison between themselves and others of what was spiritual, of what was better. And they would be able to sink into this pristine answer with the spirit, while simply unwinding from relationships that have served and are complete, and coming into that real juicy intimacy and past, the fear of the idea of not having ourselves surrounded by bodies and people and excitement, and sink deeper in while tidying up affairs of the world, garnering enough resources for the next stage of the journey, which would then, after the purification, be the full extension of what was gained over the next year to really answer the life's calling. But it would actually be the answering of the life's calling to do this simplification now. For all of us, if you really heard guidance, your likelihood of response will be like, really? That? Well, that just sounds easy. Of course I could do that, but like that is the natural response to guidance, not fear. It's so easy. It seems to require so little of us that we could hardly believe that's what's being asked. What does it matter that I live in that town or this town? It's like, well, find out. Find out. What does it matter if I'm in spiritual community, or I get a good high-paying job and I live in a house share in some quiet country town and I just save all my money for a year, or I work on an oil rig, or I go to Antarctica and I'm a cleaner there because they get paid $50 an hour because, most of the time they're watching Netflix and chilling, and just nobody could stand that for their mind to be in Antarctica. It's like, yes, and in 6 months, everything would be done and fresh, and you would be closer to the truth of who you are in every moment, because you had abandoned your own personal plan for awakening. And what I have loved and deeply experienced over the years is how, when the plan gets revealed, simultaneously I could always feel and see and honor what it was allowing me to depart from that wasn't for me. And it was usually some sense of identity that was like good, like a good helpful person, like a good caring person. And anyone who's been undoing the mom role or the sister role or any of the loving roles, the loving father role, the good husband, understands that built into it is a preference that might have served the spirit for a period of time, but we just feel better about ourselves because we can put the focus on the other person. but that's not really going to serve us anymore, you see. So awareness maybe that you're stepping out of a caring role, or even what might look like a spiritual role, so that you can truly heal this idea that you're a person in the world, autonomously running around trying to feel free. Just imagine the relief of simply doing what was asked of you, instantaneously knowing that that was the absolute highest that you could do. Not that you could do and someone else could do something higher. I mean, that is literally the top of the line epicness of what is needed from you. Most people don't follow because it's so simple. They're expecting convoluted, fearful, pushing, programming, leaps of faith. And actually, it's very, very soft and subtle, but it's so subtle that you can miss it and just take the on-ramp again. Is everyone with me? Can you feel what I'm saying? This is everything, because it undoes this personal sense of choosing between things and deciding what's best for myself. You've never met yourself. It's like having an expert lover who knows how to touch you in all the ways you never knew you liked being touched, and that you've been resisting this whole time. And it turns out it's like, whoa, it's blowing your mind, because suddenly the relaxation and the sense of safety and the easiness, and yes, some little discomforts that will come up, but you'll just get to notice them. It'll be really easy to identify where they're coming from, the belief and the desire that's propelling them, instead of this getting up and struggling every day. That isn't the way, and that's not what's asked of you. And so it would have to be a very disciplined response to that sloppy trying, lazy exertion, and constant struggling that we still pride ourselves in doing. It would have to be a willingness in every moment to go, I'd rather forget the whole thing than spend the next hour thinking I had to punish and struggle and sacrifice myself. I'd rather see where I'm wrong right now, that I'm having that experience at all. I'd rather spend 15 minutes right now really facing why I believe that, and then happily continuing on with what's given, having seen where the struggle's really coming from, than having spent a week or saying, I'm sure I'll get it next time or next lifetime. Or present peace is all that we've ever devoted ourselves to in this show. And it undoes spiritual travailing and trying. And, it's like the Olympics or something. It comes with all these things that have nothing to do with the pure inspiration to leap over a vault or something. And so we want to restore ourselves to that awareness. And, the devotion in these emails is really high, but so is the pain threshold. The pain threshold is really high. And when you've been a mighty companion with people and you've watched seeming people, stub their toes for years in a row, and all it would take was pausing one moment longer with the intensity and with a mighty companion, that there's a point where you say, I am in trust that everything worked out great for everyone in the stories, for the mind to awaken, because you only can wake from happy dreams. And yet, if you ask what is the gentlest, easiest way, that is also the fastest way of it unfolding. And if we can't identify that we've already fallen into a bush and that we're in fact clamoring to keep the thorns around us so that we're hidden and we're not totally exposed as somehow being wretched and in pain and suffering from this delusion that keeps, oh my God, racing us around in circles, despite all of our effort, despite all of our willingness. If we can't go, like, what the hell, Sarah? Like, what the hell? Like, seriously, hell, this is hell. It's like, of course it's hell. You have a brilliant and bright mind. It couldn't be anything but hell. But the simplicity of the guidance needs to be followed. And you can't amend guidance. You can't pick and choose between it, because that's like saying, I'll just put in the first 4 numbers of the 12-digit code that's needed to unlock the safe. I like numbers going from 1 to 12. So it said 4, 6, 8, 9, but I'm not going back to 1 then. No, I'm not going backwards. I've come this far. I'm not going backwards. And I'm like, we're unlocking a safe. It has to go back. The tumbler has to roll back to 1. It's not linear. You have come this far. You've come this far in trust, though, that you didn't know the way. And if we have come to some position where we now think we know, we're going to be lost to ourselves, and it's going to get torturous. And this need not be. And that is the level of devotion of everyone who's been on this show for the last few weeks. And I know it. And I know it because everyone writes to me and tells me where they're at and how they found last week and where they're stuck. And so you're cracking a safe. You're not going backwards because you have to go back to 1. That's just the number that's next. It's not sequential. Everything happens in a different order for the seemingly different characters to allow the mind to unlock. And all you want to do is be on the step that's given for you, knowing that it's the absolute highest position with the maximum relief and release for your mind. That's all you have to trust in. That's the development of trust. You can't look outside. You can't compare yourself to others. You can't compare what other people are being asked to do. You only have to say, there's a stuckness. And so I want to hear the one thing that will help me today. And I know you're all hearing it in your mind. The one thing that will help you today. So let's move on to our last question. The people who wrote these questions actually know what they wrote. So I'm just trusting I don't need to read all of them. We seem to be focusing on the answer every week, which is the greatest joy. And the difficulties that we are experiencing, that is what the mind is experiencing. And anyone who wants to make comparisons between peoples will be missing the point of the mind awakening perfectly today. Sarah, after last week's Zoom call, the belief came up, I can't do anything right. So many reflections that whole week surrounding that one belief. I thought I worked through each reflection, but it hit me hard today again. And that was yesterday, just before they signed up. There's just so much evidence that I'm not doing the right thing to stay healthy, although I can't think of one more thing I could do or possibly do. I have even spent a great deal of time releasing thoughts, but I am still in this ugly, frustrating space and disillusioned that one thing is replaced by the previous or added to the mix of problems. And this is very articulate about the challenge. You see, and it's someone's locating themselves. They're allowing themselves to be found, their hearts wide open. I know we've talked about getting me out of the loop, but sadly, I can't seem to find my way out of that. Even that, just the honoring of the I don't see the way out. I know I have to get out. It's too depressing here. Beautiful. You can feel it pinpointing right down. You can feel the lock coming on for the extraction, right? You can feel it. I'm aware of saying no to a lot of things. Here we go. This is so beautiful. This is what it's all about. You think you care about awakening? Well, then you got to care about present peace. Whoever this is lighting up in their heart with, it's lighting my heart up. I know I have to get out. It's too depressing here. I'm aware of saying no to a lot of things, mostly because of COVID and the rest of the time habit. See, awareness, 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 welcoming the awareness, allowing the disillusionment. Thank you for sharing your story. It does put things in perspective. Okay, now the story I shared was that this person was playing Cinderella. And that just wasn't given anymore. The spirit had shown up and was like, okay, you shall go to the ball. But because that doesn't match with the story the person's playing, they're like, yeah, but the dishes, and when I'm feeling better, and when I take care of this or that, and they're very devoted. But it's like, but the spirit's going, but it's now. The ball, what you think of as a treat that you get later when you're perfected, is the answer to feeling good. Going to the ball now is the answer. Going out, connecting, enjoying, meeting people is the answer to staying healthy, fit, and well now, even in form. It is the aliveness. It's the thought of God in your mind. It's the reconnecting with the truth of who you are. And so when we realize humbly, as the one who's written has here, that our way is not working, or spiritual devotion, spiritual development, personal development, caring for others, extension of the message, holding groups, everything, when we realize it's not working for us, then we must humbly come back to the drawing board, as I have many times, as many of you have many times, and once more go, okay, so maybe I don't know what's helpful now. And where's the loss in that? I don't know what's helpful now, but my mind is more open. Just because things are sliding back into the dreamscape in front of me, because the beliefs and the desires haven't been questioned, I can notice how I feel about them. I feel kind of lackluster, and is this it, really? Okay, sure, I'll just go along with it. That's not going to the ball. That's not the feeling. That's not the call up. That's not the spirit, the scintillating connections that you make with people, the brightness in your day, I'm going to face my fears and call this person even though they haven't called me. I'm going to, out how I feel about things. I'm not going to worry what anyone else thinks. I'm going to be here. I'm going to just step away from those friends and family for a little bit and give myself a break from that to find out what it is that's sticky there for me that I can't seem to notice. But I've had a discussion with my Maish companion, and they've made it obvious that Christ is not welcome there right now. And the guidance is always dust your sandals off. If Christ is not welcome, move to where Christ is welcome, not you as a person, not you as a family member, where Christ is welcome, so that can be what comes out and extends through you. Now, extension is not always in form something that looks like giving and doing and kindness. Extension is clarity and being clear and being relieved. And that seeps out and that's extended. And that's just so joyful for everyone to be around. Even those you are no longer around will feel the peace and the restoration of the truth. Do not keep yourself in situations where everything is getting smaller and tighter and you have to be more accommodating. That's not the invitation. So what is the answer here? Well, it's not a form answer. The answer to the question, do you want heaven or hell, is not that you say, well, obviously I should want heaven. It's the fact that you think there's still a choice between two things that could be yours, and that you could make the wrong choice, or that you could make the right choice. The only choice you can make is choosing the Holy Spirit to choose for God for you in every moment, and trusting that you don't know what that might look like. And the unfolding can be rapid. And everyone who's written in has had lots of times where it's clicked in and clicked up and relieved them. But if you're in a devoted relationship and it's time to move on, it's not more loving to stay. I remember when I had been in an assigned marriage, and it was also now assigned that it be divorced. And I had to sit on my hands to not be the sparkly one who knew them so well, that would just share that little cool insight or make it a little better for them, or, help, extend my heart and everything. I had to see that was my addiction. I had to see that it was me wanting to maintain a role by using that person to be this version of myself. I had to find out who I was with nothing sparkling to say. I had to find out who I was with no one to help. I had to find out who I was at a much simpler base level, where the intimacy was all being directed at me, coming for me. The care was my care that was needed, this character self and the focus. And yes, at the beginning, it was kind of excruciating. And so the stretch that comes with the heart opening and the mind expansion of truly following guidance looks different for everyone. So one of our friends is being called to go out and embrace mighty companions in a new way, fresh mighty companions, maybe some with the same name who live just 2.5 hours north of them. 2.5 hours. I worked out that for two people on this show, one would just come south by 2.5 hours, one would just go north by 2.5 hours, and that there's a place called Bolt Castle in the middle where they could meet, where it doesn't matter what country you're from, you can go on a day trip. And just 2.5 hours away, they would find a castle that was built in 1904, $2 million worth of a castle. And there was a halt called because the guy who was building the castle with 120 rooms, because of the love of his life, she suddenly died on him. And he called and he said, stop. And for 75 years, talk about a fairy tale, the castle sat there with nobody in it until it was bought back in 1977. And they've rehabbed it, and now it's open. The Bolt Castle, just on the border of Canada and North America. And there are these places in time and space that if you want to jump and not be pushed in your life, that you can make a commitment to do something that seems so out of the picture, that seems to have no good reason, where you feel this call to mirroring, to making the arrangements for someone to be giving the medications, where you say, I'm gone for a day or 2 days or 3 days. And you make this leap across time and space for yourself, just to find out how far the bungee cord will let you go, just to find out, can you just do something so out of pattern that won't hold you back? And if you've been someone who's been willing to do things out of pattern all your life, then can you come into norm core? Can you be nothing to nobody? Can you simply be one in devotion, simply paying back your loan as a backdrop for your mind to undo all of the other ideas about who you are that have been just clogging up the purity of your calling and the beauty of who you are and the gorgeousness of what you have to give? Just like a purification and a simplification and a not knowing and a not being. It's very freeing to go and be somewhere you've never been and not know anyone and simply be the job. I left being an actress and I became a cleaner in a hospital because I was studying A Course in Miracles where nobody knew me or anything about me. And when I would meet someone out at a bar, for example, and they'd say, what do you do? And I'm with my friend who's a chemist and they're biochemists and everybody's all exciting careers. And I would just say, I'm a tea lady. I clean in a hospital. And I never told them other things I did. I just really wanted to experience myself as not something that had something esoteric or special associated with it anymore. And it was a beautiful purification during my early Course in Miracles days of really learning the course and unlearning the world that I had made to shore up my self-concept. And so for all of us, it's about getting clear on what it is. And you have a calling, you've been freed up perhaps, and freed up financially, and you currently aren't in debt. And so this whole wide spectrum of the world of answering your calling and giving 100% devotion to stepping completely out of your known world is available to you. And then you sidle and creep back into little crevices of it, never getting to know or taste the magnitude that the Spirit has for you, just simply out of a kind of a habit feeling of, well, it's reappearing. And I'm like, yes, but it's reappearing because the steps that would have allowed the questioning of the mind have not occurred. More will be given. They're always available. It's always an off-ramp. But don't just slide back into things again. That's actually not the way it works. It would feel like a thrilling, exciting opportunity where you were perfectly meeting a calling that was your own, intimately in every moment, where you would feel alive and lit and supported and sparkling. So we've the three types there. So generous in the questions that came this week, so generous in the answer that they're allowing us to sink in together, right? We've the three types: the familiar, the devoted, and the being in one place, and the doing everything in form that looks right to be devoted, but it not being going to the ball. And then we have the wanting to answer the calling and the feeling the call up, and then the slow slide, because a couple of basic steps of experiencing yourself differently by moving out of the known world you've been in haven't quite happened yet, didn't quite get taken on board, aren't recognized as really essential yet. And then we have the esoteric out there, willing to go to the top of the mountain, willing to relinquish everything, but not feeling safe enough to sit still, do the simple next indicated thing, clear the debts, be ready, understand that it is the highest, and that there's a delight for my companions to join with one who's devoted in such a way. You see, in all three scenarios, there's a real draw to be connected with that one when they embrace that avenue fully, and what it will flush up for them. That is actually something that does need to be seen and questioned. And this isn't possible to see them if you go in any other avenue that seemed like our idea, because all of those will just maintain the self-concept. So they're wildly different, all three. And yet that should be enough for everyone here to hear where they're holding back, or where they're like, oh, yeah, but we're kind of comfortable here. Whichever version it is, there is a limit to the amount of pain you can experience. And if you want to know if you're feeling alive and lit and living, then there will be a stretch in each three scenarios, no matter which one it is for you. There'll be a stretch for you, you see. So it's just highly individualized. And I really want everyone to kind of just drop in for a moment into seeing the kindness and the generosity and the simplicity, always simplicity of what the guidance is and what it's in principle for your agreement designed to help you lean into at the beginning. Because it does help if you can say, oh, okay, I could see, yeah, that yeah, staying in that one small town all the time. Definitely not a preference. Definitely that same job, not doing, any wild esoteric, no 5 MEOs on the weekends, no hiking up mountains. I can feel that it would really call into question and raise up things about myself that I've been a little reluctant to face, because I was sure there could be kind of a more exciting way to do it, or a better, higher way. And wow, the luck and the relief of it having come to the point where it gets made so obvious that, yeah, it's now. You're so worthy. You're so worthy of making that move now, with everyone who's ever loved you cheering you on. Like really, really, the great relationship you'll end up with by not being the sparkly one, by being the one who just takes the time for themselves. Like, see you in a year, see you at Easter, and facing whatever that brings up for us and ourselves, or the calling up and you want to do this, you want to meet at Bull Castle, you want to meet halfway, you want to just see what the hell, what this break for the border might give us, you want to find out together, whatever it is, or the finding out the difference it makes between staying with one parent or another, if that's what's given, even for a few weeks, just to find out, notice the slide of making commitments where you were guided not to make them until you were clear and things had shifted by September, and that you were to be in certain types of relationship and you were to honor those exclusively, not put your focus onto other things. Notice that the guidances were given and that there was some slide off or some conclusion drawn that it didn't kind of matter. And watch the amnesia that comes over us. We did not mean it. We did not mean that. Nobody wants the sleep. Nobody wants that. But it takes a lot to notice it when you're going down and out. It takes a lot of mighty companionship to notice it. A lot of accountability with mighty companions who'll go, hang on. Or I love you. I'm so grateful you've been there for me for years, but I'm with you now. Take your leap. Take your leap. Don't talk to me for a year. I'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. Let's come back together in a year and share the exciting stories of what we've learned since then, with love. You must embrace each other and let each other go, all in the one movement, really, all the time. And yes, it'll all slip back in to fill the void that you've opened up a space in your life. So yeah, it will all just slide back in because of the unquestioned beliefs and desires. So perhaps everyone could just take a moment to sit with what we've shared. I know it's been a lot. There is even more I felt to read, but I'll just read this one little bit while we all think of and apply it to ourselves, and then see if there's any really vibrant question coming up on the heart that would address anything that's unclear of what I've shared, not really about the personal aspect of any particular thing I've shared from questions, but really anywhere you feel a frustration or a difficulty because you can still feel there isn't a desire to follow through, somewhere where there's still like a stuckness. So again, like last week when I said, I want your outrage, I want your frustrated stuckness where you would like to be wrong. It is a condition of putting your hand up, not yet anyone, and it will be a physical hand, where you are so sick of what you can see and you want the release, but there's a tweak that the whole mind needs, not you personally asking, and you can ask it for everyone. So we'll read this bit and then I'll offer it, and then we'll put physical hands up in a moment. If there's someone who's got something there just ready to pop through, maybe you can't even believe I'm talking to you today. Maybe you still don't realize you're it, you're the entire universe, and how you feel is all that matters. You have learned your need of healing. Would you bring anything else to the sonship? Recognizing your need of healing for yourself? Like, that's your greatest gift you could bring. That's your greatest gift, your need of healing, your recognition of your need of healing. You know, your recognition that you live in a prison, your recognition that it doesn't feel good still, that you're still making some same repeat mistake. For in this lies the beginning of the return to knowledge, the foundation on which God will help build again the thought system that you share with him. So it is to be able to restore yourself to the awareness of only the thoughts I think with God are true. You need to learn of your healing. And today and last week we were making it, and the word is painfully obvious, that it's so easy once you ask for the help. It's so easy to have yourself relieved. It's so non-threatening. It's so non-compromising. It doesn't affect anyone else. It doesn't threaten any of your relationships. It enhances everything. Why? Because it's the miracle. Gotta let the miracle do the heavy lifting. The laws of the universe do not permit contradiction. That's it. There's no contradiction between something feeling like that's what you're called to do and anything else. There's no contradiction. What holds for God holds for you. Now, unless you think God's unloving, how can you think that anything you could seemingly express or expose or move into could be unloving? If you believe you are absent from God, you will believe that he is absent from you. And this is it. It's God's will and mine are one. And what for? For happiness. And if there is any little sticky thing on anyone's heart where they just like rip the Band-Aid off, Sarah, help, like, let's just expose this for the mind, for everyone, then I'm right here for it. And I spent a devoted 24 hours in looking at this for myself as well, so that I could come and offer no contradiction and say, I know that my healing is all that I can offer in this moment here. There's no I know speaking. This is definitely an open ear, like, for hearing together the answer. So yeah, put up a physical hand if there's a question, if there's a just to really let it settle in and land. Janice McNamara. So Chris is just unmuting you, and you are too. Hi, Janice.
Hi. Thank you. This has been great. The stuck point for me is this little place where you're symptomatic, but you're getting called to go do something. And you don't want to say no. Everything in your mind is saying no, is saying yes, I would love to do that. Mm-hmm. But then the body's not catching up to it. So it's that, at what point, and I certainly walk through it and, just go out and do it anyways. And, it usually is okay, but there are times it's not. And it's, this place where I can't move from into the joy. never mind knowing what it is.
Sure. Well, I would say that there's possibly still a picking and choosing between things that are given, and they're still from the old pile, because this call was for nobody from the past, for you to completely let go of all of those friendships, relationships, and to embrace something completely out of the park.
Wow.
So 3 years ago, the guidance was to leave the group, to put someone else in charge of it, to not see the family, so this is going on a while. And after that guidance came in, then the sickness started coming. So they wanted to take me I was in Mexico, and they wanted to take me to hospital because they thought I had pneumonia. I was coughing up like the kitchen sink and could barely breathe and would have to leave gatherings and have to go somewhere. And it was overwhelming, and like, it was like dying. Every part of me wanted to be there. Every part of me wanted to be there. No part of me wanted to be anywhere else. I wanted to be in total 24/7 service. I wanted to be doing exactly what I was doing. There wasn't a thought of another thing I wanted to do, but it became very starkly clear that I was complete there in a way I could not understand, because I could not accept it. Because it was so different to my plan for what I thought was being asked of me for my life and my devotion and my commitment, that I could not see past that thought. I couldn't even question it, because it was such a noble thought. It was such an, it just, even when I'd expose it with a mighty companion, we'd say, yeah, unless I'm supposed to go. And then we'd just start roaring, laughing. Like, yeah, of course, like as if. But that was it. That was it. I got to the airport. I just, I just honored what was happening. I got to the airport. There was no decision to leave. There was no decision to go. It was just an acceptance of what was physically happening and being called for. I walked out the gate. I got into, duty free or whatever at the airport. I'm still coughing my guts up. The double doors open. I walked through and I never coughed again. Never coughed again. It was throwing up before that. Never coughed again. And I'm today trying to share how out of awareness what I'm talking about is for all of us. It's an unquestioned belief in the mind that is having us stay in a comfort zone that is no longer serving us. No longer serving us. And because of my refusal to do what I've asked and invited all of us to do again today, is to get really good at locating where you really are and how you are really, really feeling. The Spirit had a completely different plan for me. Completely different plan for me. Completely different plan for me. But until I'd begun to embrace the new plan for me, I couldn't even rationalize or understand what was happening up till then, or why everything was going downhill, why everything was getting so intense and so confused. And so there was no lack of devotion. There was a willingness to look at the no. Everything was on board, everything, but it wasn't for me. And it was that simple. There was another calling that was for me. And every time I let it slide and fill back in, of course, some mighty companion out of left field would just kick up a storm and make something really clear out of something that wasn't clear, except for the movement that was indicated in the guidance. So we can unmute Janet. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Now I do. Yes, you clarified what I was going to ask you then.
Yeah.
So
because if you don't make the movement, you won't know. You won't understand.
Right.
Until that decision to go and embrace a mighty companion, say, for example, in the way that was just described, take an adventure, until that is seen as the answer. Like one time I put my back out, I couldn't actually stand up straight, but it turned out cleaning all the broken glass off the kitchen floor and getting rid of all the cockroaches on my own in a kitchen for 20 people fixed my back. It's counterintuitive, but the trust has to be there first. You have to have finally admitted that you tried everything your way and the logical way, and it didn't work. And when you hear an invitation to do something out of left field come to you, and then you don't embrace it, and I don't mean you specifically, I'm talking about everyone who wrote in, because you've gone back to something familiar, just noticing that will be enough. Say, why would it make a difference which parent I stayed with? Why would it make a difference? And you won't know unless you try. You really won't know. You won't know. I didn't know. I had no idea the torture I'd been putting myself under because I was trying to do something that was very close to my calling, but not it. And so it's the tiny tweak in the mind that has you honoring exactly what's happening for you, and the guidance you've been hearing from many people. This is for everyone. You can mute Janice again, just so she doesn't have to think this is about her. You've been hearing this guidance a lot for a lifetime, maybe. It just always seems so counterintuitive. And that will be the point. The point would be to see what it would have you face to go in that direction. And then you'd start to feel your whole sail warming up towards it. And you would get the fuck it feeling. It's like, well, fuck it. I've tried to do everything exactly the way I thought it was supposed to be, the most highest, the most honorable, the most devoted. And the spirit's like, yeah, but the little self's not getting taken care of. There's a compromise built right in through all of it. And we can't let you go forward like that. You're compromised. You're not having the fullness of the love. You're not having the fullness of this peace and safety and expansion. It won't work for you. Please, please let us tweak you out to where you can have the experience you need to go deeper. Yes, you're very devoted, but you're in pain. Would you just let me unwind you, please? Please stop with the suffering and the thinking there's an advantage. It's very deep in our psyche. It's very, very deep. Let's serve others and put them first. Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. It's like, you need to start to see why we were doing that. So I feel like everybody has joined in like this searing devotion today to have a look at that for themselves. And again, it's not about really what you do in form, but the thing that kind of slides over and doesn't let you open up your mind fully to what's been invited, because it goes, oh, I'm sure this is just as good. It looks like service. Nobody's really interested, but looks good. Could raise my self-esteem doing it. I'll tell you, I have a partner who thought his entire thing was that he needed to have more confidence in everything. All he needs to do was just leave all of what he knew and find out he was sublimely confident already. He had all this add-on of expectations he was putting on himself. And the minute he took himself out of the context, he was just like his dream self already. He was just magnetic and in magnitude and wasn't trying so hard. Just remove yourself from the setting to the one that's given for you now. And it's all an outward picture of an inward condition. And if the inward conditions are maintained, then of course the reflection of what looks like ailments or pains, of course it will maintain, because you haven't tweaked where it's coming from. The pain is never coming from the body. The pain is never coming from the situation. The pain is never coming from the relationship. The pain is coming from the self-concept that we're trying to hold on to and maintain instead of being Christ. And so the spirit has lots of ways to clear that up for us really quickly. And that's why last week we talked about taking the hit, but like feeling the freedom of it, like feeling the release of not doing anymore the thing that's been causing you misery, even though you did not know that's what you were doing to yourself. You didn't know. It's not your fault. There's no blame here. Nobody's done anything wrong or right. There's just this moment, and there's this awareness of like this little limitless freedom that's on offer. If we could just embrace this living moment and what's being offered. Like a prayer a friend of mine used to have in community was, God, back me into a corner so I can't escape you, And it's like, it was a bit like that. in that relinquishment of the role. Find the subtle roles you've been playing and find how you want to maintain that, because, it's like when I cut off all my hair and shaved my head, it was like I had heard myself say one day, well, at least I have nice hair. I thought, that's terrible. What a terrible thing to say. At least I have nice hair. So I just decided to get rid of it completely so I could experience myself without that thought. Like, if that was like the bare minimum I'm hanging on to, like as an esteem, that's the very thing you want to pull the rug on. Well, the spirit will want to pull the rug on, and your cooperation is just sparklingly enjoyed and welcomed. And there's one movie that really epitomizes this, and I would love you all to rewatch it if you've seen it before. It's called Sun Chaser, and it's a wonderful movie where someone who thinks he's the one in control, who knows something, embarks on a holy relationship assignment journey with another, and just discovers this whole other world about himself that he didn't know. It's called Sun Chaser. So yeah, the pain is not necessary, and the promise would be of the ball. You're not opening the door to trying and suffering and anything. Wait for the thing that leaps your heart. Open up to it for yourself. That castle, Bolt's castle. Make a bolt for the door. Run towards a mighty companion, a reflection of the same devotion to find out what will try and stop you between here and there, and getting to meet one another during COVID, during a time when nobody should be able to make a break for the border and get to see each other without having to cross officially a border. But I found a way that it's possible. 2.5-hour journey for each person was all it would take. And you just have to say, as an experiment, would I like to embrace this? If no obvious, pertinent, immediate guidance has been given, would this bolt for the border give me in my heart and mind something to move towards, to find out where the ties are, where the stickiness is, what would prevent me from going? Something as simple as taking a day trip, and to find the thing that wouldn't let me go. And even just to have that awareness of where the fear came up or the resistance came up. So yeah, I just want to join you all in just opening to the prayer of not condemning, not thinking something went wrong before, not thinking you have to get it right in the future, but just like the mesmerism that comes. Like when I was trying to sell my house and I was waiting to get my green card to move to America, I wasn't allowed to be in America. So I'm sitting in a house that just got set on fire because somebody threw a petrol bomb in my window, mistaking my house for the house next door to it. I'm trying to sell it. I have to be 10 months outside of the country before I can go. And I'm just here going, this is just getting weirder and weirder. I don't know. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to, but I don't know. And I was like, I must be looking at this wrong. So I got out The Truman Show and I watched it 3 times in a row to say, where am I making the mistake? There's some little exception to the miracle that I'm making where I've conjuncted 2 things that aren't linked that is blocking me. And I realized that the belief was because I was trying to sell the house, I had to be at the house. And that, once I questioned that, I found a flight for $100 to Canada, and I had $107, and I got on the plane with $7 in my pocket, sending messages going, hello, would anybody like to host me? And that was it. And it turned into an epic 3 years of visiting Canada nonstop for an entire gang who were just so excited to meet with me and me with them. Just the thought was that if I'm trying to sell the house, I need to be beside the house. That was all it took. And I had nothing, no resources, no extra special things. Again, it's just an unquestioned thought in your mind that you're utilizing based on the person you think you are. And it's keeping who you are out of awareness. And who you are is completely unlimited. Doesn't need anything to shore it up or reassure it. And wants you to discover very plainly and very simply the magnitude of that, the epicness of that, the simplicity of that, and how little is asked of you. If you do the one small thing, invite it will take you into a state of mind that from there, wow, it's even more unlimited what's possible. And it's not about throwing yourself into the world and doing things. It's about just tweaking that way of thinking so that it can unfold from a new state of mind where things are questioned and watched and reviewed and joined with mighty companions. So thank you so much for your smiling faces. It's very supportive. It's really, I prayed so much over these questions because I'm past the point where I needed to be different for anyone else, or I see stuckness per se, or think that anything could be wrong. But when I hear the call of the heart that is mine, and I realize how dense it could get and how I couldn't see anything different from what I was doing because I was so devoted, then I really wanted to speak to that level of devotion today, and that desire for release in the mind to myself, for myself, just to say, you have no idea. To myself, you have no idea, Sarah, what's available to you when you no longer wish to maintain something in the world, and you can be released again and again and again from what you imagine is expected of you, what you imagine is needed from you, and let me take over your life and do through what will be scintillating and joyful for all. So I join you in this heart-opening week of just finding out. Look at the thing that you would say, well, surely couldn't be that. Just have a look. Look at it again with the spirit, with a kind of an open-eyed wonder of like, oh my God, wow, is this the loophole? Is this the crack? Is this the crack through which I just step and move? Even though it seems so counterintuitive. Of course it would be counterintuitive. Of course it would be counterintuitive to the ego to make this step. Of course. But what have I got to lose? Nothing. Because I'm going with the spirit, out of joy, for joy, in joy, to enjoy. So there's not a possibility of losing out here or making a mistake. There's just a whole new world of possibility, though, opening up in the mind for you and everyone you love by just having a go. Questioning that unquestioned thought, moving in that direction that seems slightly banal, or I understand that, or complacent. So yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone for your presence, your prayer, and your questions, because everybody knows that if they ask something with me, they'll never be pussyfooting around. So I know it takes incredible courage just to write, but thank you for writing for all of us, for all of the things we cannot see without each other, without our wing mirrors, and I just join you in opening to the miracles that are there ready to catch you up and swish you into a whole new state of mind, a whole new sense of possibility. And simply because you don't expect it, it comes with an open-mindedness, you see, in a way you've perhaps not been facing into things for quite a while, because we start to think we do know, or we do understand how everything works. And thankfully, that will never be true. We can always be surprised by joy. So yeah, my just deep heartfelt appreciation for everyone who wrote in, for whatever response everyone's having to what was shared. Just understanding that we're just unlocking the mind. It's just a tumbler and we're cracking it forward and back, but we have to listen for the clicks. And don't stop if you don't hear a click. You're worthy of the time and attention. Go back and forth, feel the click. It has to land in an intimate way where you can go, I can feel that. Yeah, I'm not super drawn to it, but wow, I can feel the potential of that to like release me or push, just like lift me out of this way of thinking. Ooh, yeah, that would be a stretch. I could feel it. I could feel that, It's like, and then it's exciting. You've got something to lean into with the spirit. You're on an adventure now, suddenly, and that's all these are, adventures of forgiveness, until we're totally restored to that softness where it's all good, it's all been done, worked out great. Until then, it's like cracking a little safe to open up the mind to come back to that awareness. So few to the right, a few back to the left. It's not linear. No procrastination and no self-sabotage of saying it should be different. You don't know what it needs to be. We do know it will turn out great though. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Much love to all of you, and very lovely to see you all with us today. Thank you.